I'm going to continue the theme on the cross today, and we're talking about wisdom for living and being fools for Christ. But before I speak, I want you to watch this little video clip, and I want you to think about this question. What would you do if you were God? I realize I might be stretching the bounds of a preacher, but I just love that. I love that clip. What would you do if you were God? Now, quite honestly, I would absolutely do something like that. Sorry, don't tell anybody. I know this is going to go out on YouTube and all that stuff, but, anyway, I'll move on. The cross, particularly if you're coming from my point of view and you think a little bit logically about it, is really obscene, isn't it? Now, as we as Christians can say, oh yeah, it makes sense. We understand. This is what the cross means. This is what the cross is for, so on and so forth. We kind of say it without even thinking anymore. But if you really begin to think about it, it's quite a weird way for God to bring us back to himself, isn't it? I mean, when I first became a Christian and somebody says, it's the blood of the cross, Jesus hanging on the cross, I looked at him and I said, what are you talking about? Why a cross? Why did God have to die on a cross? Why did he have to go through all this pain and suffering for things he didn't do? It just, quite frankly, made no sense to me. Now, again, I wasn't born and raised in a Christian household. I didn't have all these thoughts and these ideas about God and being good. But it just really made no sense to me. And I was conflicted about it. I could believe in a God, you understand. That's okay. But to have to believe in a Jesus who's the Son of God, fully man, dying on a cross, I was like, couldn't God come up with a better way? And then the preacher said, just pretend it was your son and you can identify. And I'm like, that's nuts. There's absolutely no way I can identify with. I would never do that to my son. You see. And so I was quite perplexed about the cross. And the point of it is this, simply. God stumped us all. You can pretend to be black and white like you understand every single thing about God. But if you do think that, you're really not being honest with yourself. Because God is an amazing, big, huge, unfathomable, he's an amazing God. And sometimes we forget that in all of our smarts of trying to figure out what God's all about. We cannot figure out God with our wisdom. This morning I want to talk about the wisdom of God, about living for God, about being fools for Christ. I've heard many people say we need to be fools for Christ, but quite frankly, I always felt like what they were saying to me is I have to be an idiot for God. You all right? Now that didn't sit well with me. I said, I'm not going to be an idiot for God and do stupid things. And I don't think when we get into the scripture, being a fool for Christ or preaching the cross, which is foolishness to those who don't understand the cross, means that we have to walk around like a bunch of, cuckoos, not understanding anything about what we're doing. Are you with me? Okay, good. Let me read you our scripture for this morning, Corinthians. For our guests, it should be on the board, or on a projector. 1 Corinthians starting in verse 18. It says, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligent of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in wisdom of God, the world, through its wisdom, did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand miraculous signs, and the Greeks look for wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than the man's wisdom. And the weakness of God is stronger than the man's strength. Brothers, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. There's the key. Boasting. It is because of him that you are in Jesus Christ, who has become for us the wisdom from God. That is our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. Therefore, as it is written, let him who boasts in the Lord. There's the key, folks, right there. Who do you boast in? What's it all about? Let me give you a quick background about the Corinthian church. It was a wealthy city. It was a luxurious city where people had great lifestyles. There was a mixed population of Greeks, Jews, and Romans. The Corinthians had this self-image that they were spiritually mature. They were it. I mean, they thought they were the church that you would want to look at. They were spiritually gifted. They were well taught. They were trained. They were educated. And they felt like they were it for God. Does that make sense? So we could say the Corinthian church was operating in all the gifts of the Spirit. Today, if you put the Corinthian church somewhere in America, they're the ones we read about. It's like the power of God is there. Go there. Go there. That's what the Corinthian church was like. In some ways, it might be quite a lot like the American church in general. Many of us think we got it, don't we? That was the Corinthian church. To understand the scripture, you have to understand Greek philosophy a bit. And that, if you understand Greek philosophy, it's about being focused on reason and inquiry. Does that make sense? Focus on reason and inquiry. They were smart, philosophical, learned, sophisticated, scholarly, and brilliant. They spent a lot of time debating about the things of life and even coming up with what they thought were the right answers to life. I relate a lot to the Greek mind, personally. Now the Jews, their philosophy, they spent years, and they're still doing it today, where they're telling stories about the great deliverer, the great Messiah. He's going to come and save them. And he's going to establish an actual political kingdom and rule over the Jews. And they've been telling this story for centuries. They're waiting for the Messiah to return right now. And they have it black and white. They know what they're looking for. They know, this is what you do with the Torah. This is what you do at the bar mitzvahs. This is what you do here. This is how it is until Jesus returns. This is how it's supposed to be. So these are the two mindsets Paul's dealing with. So my question to you right now is, what is your philosophy?